Imagine being so terrified that you would rather face certain death in a minus 30 degrees Celsius blizzard than stay inside your tent for one more second.
Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into one of the most chilling, mind-bending puzzles of the 20th century, the 1959 enigma of Dyatlov Pass. Seriously, forget everything you think you know about extreme survival, because the facts we're about to unpack here, they absolutely defy all logic.
Minus 30 degrees Celsius. Barefoot in the snow. Just let that sink in for a second. We are talking about the kind of bone-chilling cold where the air literally burns your lungs, and survival is measured in minutes, not hours. Yet, in these exact brutal conditions, individuals were found wandering through the icy dark completely without shoes. The real question isn't just how they died, but why on earth they would ever put themselves in such a fatal, impossible situation to begin with.
Part 1. The Pass of Horror. Okay, let's set the scene. It's the Soviet Union, 1959. Out in the Ural Mountains, it's a harsh, totally isolated, and unforgiving environment. Setting up a camp out here, it demands absolute rigor and flawless preparation. It is simply not an environment that forgives mistakes. 9. That is the exact number of people on this expedition. And look, these weren't your average weekend tourists or beginners. Official documents are super clear on this. We're talking about 9 highly experienced hikers. They knew the cold intimately, they had emergency procedures totally mastered, and they knew exactly how to survive in the Urals. Highlighting this expertise is absolutely crucial, because it instantly rules out any theory that this was just a simple rookie mistake or some naive panic. Moving on to part 2, an incomprehensible flight. Now this is where things get wild. Deep in the middle of the night, all rationality just completely vanishes from the reports. While they were safely tucked inside their camp, something happened. Something so powerful it instantly erased years and years of hardcore survival training. You've got the stark contrast. On one hand, the deep rationality, control, and composure of seasoned experts. But on the other, an act of absolute frantic desperation. They didn't just casually unzip the door to take a look outside. They didn't look for the natural exit. In a state of total, blinding panic, they physically slashed their own tent open from the inside out. They completely abandoned their only shelter in minus 30-degree weather to just throw themselves into the pitch-black night. So what could possibly terrify experts to this extent? Honestly, what kind of imminent mortal threat makes fleeing into the freezing night without any gear seem like your best and only option for survival? That right there is the absolute core of this mystery. Highly rational people acting in a completely irrational way. Part 3. Unexplained injuries. When the search teams finally reached the area, the scene they found just defied all comprehension. The bodies of the hikers weren't huddled together trying to share warmth. Nope, they were scattered chaotically across the snow, leaving this grim testament to the absolute panic of their final moments. Now, you might be thinking hypothermia is the obvious cause of death here, right? Well, the autopsies revealed a much darker, nightmarish reality. Broken ribs, fractured skulls. These definitely aren't your typical injuries from someone who just slipped in the snow or got a bit disoriented. We're talking about massive, severe traumas involving extreme blunt force. It's almost as if an immense, crushing pressure suddenly struck them down in the dark. And beyond the sheer violence of those bone fractures, the official reports noted a chilling, almost surgical detail. One of the victims was missing a tongue. Yeah. When you try to factor a detail that bizarre and clinical into the scenario of a typical mountain accident, complete incomprehension just sets in. So how exactly do we bridge the massive gap between a night of absolute horror and a completely rational explanation? Decades have passed since the brutal tragedy of 1959. Today, modern investigators and scientists are using contemporary tech and fresh perspectives to try and finally shed some light on this deeply disturbing cold case. Part 4. Modern Theories. The goal here is to set aside the horror for a minute and look at this methodically. Science requires order, right? It relies on predictable models to try and explain massive physical trauma and a desperate, frantic escape. By compiling topographical and meteorological data, modern investigations heavily favor 2 main hypotheses. The first is a small avalanche, basically a sudden, localized slab of hard snow crashing down onto the tent. This would cause severe blunt force trauma and trigger a panic that actually justified slashing the tent open to escape. The second theory points to a rare natural phenomenon, likely tied to extreme anomalous winds, creating a desperate fight for survival. Both of these theories finally offer some concrete physical mechanisms for what went down.
Part 5. A persistent mystery. While those scientific explanations definitely offer a reassuring, logical framework, this case is still far from closed. Even modern science continues to hit a massive wall when faced with the glaring anomalies of that night.
Even the experts themselves acknowledge the hard limits of their models. As they note, many details remain deeply troubling, because an avalanche simply doesn't perfectly explain the missing clothes, the wide scattering of the bodies, or those highly specific, almost surgical mutilations. When you put it to the test against all the evidence, the scientific model still feels undeniably incomplete.
So, if it was just a simple avalanche, why do these troubling details persist? We've seen the deep experience of these hikers, the mind-bending panic, the devastating physical injuries, and the ultimate limits of modern science. Sometimes, even the most rational explanation fails to fully erase the shadow of doubt. Keep your critical thinking sharp and keep questioning the unexplained corners of history.
Share your theories in the comments below, and if you want to explore more of history's most terrifying unsolved cases, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications.